Hello, Barbies, Kens, and non-binary friends. I'm Zarina, if you're new here. If you do know me, hi. Thanks for being here. Welcome back. I have a bachelor's degree in English, which means I spend a lot of time overanalyzing things, which is what we're gonna be doing today with the Barbie movie. I'm also gonna be doing a little Barbie-inspired pink makeup look. Let's go ahead and get started. So I know that it's a bit overstated, but the world of Barbie, like just the world building that they did for this film is just so incredible and just like top tier. I actually saw on YouTube, there's an architectural digest video where they do like a tour of the set, and they have this book on her bedside table that is Moby Barbie, which I thought was absolutely hilarious because they could choose literally any classic, but they decided to, I think, very intentionally choose Moby Dick because Dick doesn't exist in Barbie land. But yeah, everything felt very much like how you would play with a Barbie in an actual Barbie house. They went pretty camp about it, which I really liked. It was very beautiful, but also had this kind of like plastic fake element to it, which very much echoed in kind of the like toxic positivity. Like when she brings up death, everyone's like, what? Why would you say that? That doesn't exist here. Everything's just very like perfect, very surface level, very pretty. But yeah, though I will say all the women like in charge and all the intelligent stuff that they said was pretty great. Like at almost the very beginning, one of the Barbies says, "I have no difficulty holding both logic and feeling at the same time. And it doesn't diminish my powers, it expands them." And I was like, oof, we are starting off strong. That was such a good line, but it was still about her being passionate. It wasn't necessarily about any negative emotions or existential thinking, which, as we know, becomes a driving force later on in the movie. Another thing, speaking of literary references, that was really fun was how they included the Wizard of Oz as she's driving through the town by the movie theater. There's a poster of the Wizard of Oz. Oh, later on, as they're driving out of Barbie land, it is a pink brick road instead of a yellow brick road. Also, just the story of going to this different magical land, except in this case, it's reversed because she's going from this magical land to the real world. And then of course, you know, they drive on the brick road to come back into the real world. Anyway, it kind of mirrors that element in Wizard of Oz. Something that I really loved about the movie was that it wasn't a love story, it was an identity story for both Barbie and Ken. And look, I love a good love story. I love love, but there is kind of an oversaturated market of love stories that just predominantly focus on the romance rather than stories that predominantly focus on identity. It's just super refreshing, especially at the end when Ken is saying like, I don't know who I am without you. It's always Barbie and Ken. It's never just Barbie and just Ken, and kind of his codependent relationship with Barbie and how she encourages him to figure out who he is outside of her. And I feel like in doing that, she also kind of realizes that she needs to do that for herself as well, especially at not the beginning, but right before America Ferrera's iconic speech. Barbie says, "I'm not good enough for anything." She's like, "Oh, I'm not smart enough for this. I'm not pretty enough for this. I'm not this enough for this." And kind of, you know, placing her sense of worth and identity on that, and how she grows from that throughout. And I think she kind of realizes while she's talking to Ken, like, you need to figure out who you are for yourself. You're not your girlfriend, you're not your car, you're not your house, you're not even Beach. And then she's, I think, kind of realizing for herself, like, she's not just, you know, pretty stereotypical Barbie. Like, she has to figure out who she is for herself. And that whole idea of like Ken's enough or Barbie's enough, just like as they are. And at the end, when Sasha says, well, what's Barbie's ending? And the Mattel CEO is just like, she's in love with Ken, like that's her ending. And which would be an ending in a lot of other chick flicks. So many movies end that way with, oh, well, she fell in love with the prince or the guy and that's it, that's her happy ending. And this movie said, nope, we're not going that direction, which wouldn't make sense given like the whole rest of the movie at all. But I think it's just kind of a little bit of a middle finger to all the other, I don't think it's a middle finger. I don't think it's that aggressive. It's just, I think, trying to call attention to and break away from that stereotypical ending and expectation. Reflections on patriarchy and just unbalanced systems of power in general. I mean, we see this even in Barbieland, how it's not perfect, with how things aren't great for Ken at the beginning. Right as we're introduced to Ken, it's introducing Ken in the lens of Barbie always has a great day. Ken only has a great day if Barbie looks at him. Like, his existence from the beginning is very much placed as an addendum to Barbie, and with his existence very much connected to Barbie and placing his sense of worth and esteem on Barbie, which of course, as I said, we see that kind of come undone and challenged later on in the movie. But that's kind of how it's set up. When Barbie's showing them the dream houses, or taking them to the dream houses, not knowing that it's been taken over, that it's been hijacked, Sasha's like, oh, where did the Ken stay? And Barbie's like, you know what? I don't actually know. At the beginning, Weird Barbie makes some like really uncomfortable sexual statement about Ken that's a bit like objectifying, kind of like how some men might make creepy objectifying kind of comments about women in the real world. At one point, Barbie says Ken is superfluous, and when she meets the Mattel CEO, which of course all the C-suite levels, like all men, and that was like another great scene when she's talking to them about meeting the woman in charge. But she's like, oh, well, like, what about Ken? We should get Ken. They're like, Ken's not really something we're worried about, like, ever, which of course was like a humorous statement and part of the movie, but it also kind of reinforced that like imbalance of genders in that Barbie land. And even the description of the movie says like, to live in Barbie land is to be a perfect being in a perfect place unless you have a full-on existential crisis or you're a Ken. So they're both different sides of the same coin, but not that ideal, which they mention at the end. The president says we shouldn't go back to the way it was before. No Barbie or Ken should have to live in the shadows. So I think that's kind of the more ideal world, where it's not necessarily patriarchy is bad and matriarchy is good, but rather one gender existing or being put in the position to simply serve the other isn't healthy or good for anyone. Piggybacking off of that, the way that the movie kind of comments on patriarchy in general is like, I think, genius and hilarious. But especially like with Ken, when he's kicking Barbie out of her home, and that scene with the double sunglasses, which was so funny. But before he says that, he's like, every night's guy's night. Like, you can see that he doesn't feel super good about it. Like, there was a moment where Barbie kind of looks away and you can see the emotion on his face like this. It kind of hurts him to do what he's doing, but he's kind of like getting back at Barbie for how she treated him before, when Barbieland was normal Barbieland and not Kendom whatever. And you can see that he can't express his emotions because he has this like cool guy facade. And so that aspect of toxic masculinity is hurting him and hindering his ability to openly communicate his feelings. And in the I'm Just Ken song, another wonderful part of the movie, at the beginning he says, I have feelings that I can't explain, driving me insane. So that inability to process his emotions and name them and communicate them is, you know, part of that, how the patriarchy is hurting him. And then of course how they all go to war. That's another big example. When the Barbies are devising their plan, they say it's not just about how they see us, it's about how they see themselves. And then later on they say, like, we'll let their egos like destroy each other, or what do they say? I'm looking at my notes. You play on their egos and turn them against each other. And they go from this, you know, Ken war and trying to destroy each other to physically like helping each other up. Ken is walking through towards the end and helping others up, including his like nemesis Ken. And then they stand hand in hand and they're like supporting each other in a more healthy masculinity sort of way. One of the Ken says later, we were only fighting because we didn't know who we were. And they were, you know, placing their sense of worth and identity into these just kind of superficial aspects of patriarchy that they just kind of ran and went with. And speaking of that, it's really nice to see the positive ways that the woman and I guess the Barbies interact with each other and the Kens eventually interact with each other. Kind of, as I said, rather than focusing on this love story, which they could have. I mean, I don't think Greta Gerwig would have made a film like this, but theoretically, if Mattel wanted to make a movie, it could have just been like a Barbie Ken love story. But instead it was this wonderful masterpiece that we got. But also it focused a lot on, I think, how women relate to each other and how men relate to each other. And I just really appreciated that. It also got quite existential with themes of mortality and like who you are, what your identity is, and just like what it's like to be a human and what that experience is. When Barbie's in the real world earlier on and she's in that park and kind of looking at and listening to all these different conversations and experiences that are happening that are on, you know, some of them have more joy and some of them have more negative emotions. It's just kind of like a range of human emotional stuff, not at like the extremes, but you know, there's like kids playing and then there's two guys laughing and sharing a like happy moment together, then there's a couple fighting, and you know, just different ranges, and she's kind of taking it in and feeling it all. And the interaction with the lady on the bench was such a beautiful scene, especially considering how much women are like in the beauty industry and really beyond, like aging is seen as this like, oh, like bad thing. And that was very like, she said like, oh, you're beautiful. She's like, I know it. And that was really, really refreshing and also very like tender and touching from woman to woman. There's also, as I said, the theme of mortality. Like we do get older and we do pass away, and that doesn't take away from the beauty of the human experience. And of course that scene with Ruth where Barbie's about to become human and they're holding hands and she's kind of feeling everything, and Ruth says that being a human is uncomfortable. Like humans have made things like patriarchy and Barbie just to deal with how uncomfortable being a human is. And that was a really fascinating line to me. So yeah, I got a little existential. They didn't have to get that existential with the Barbie movie, but they did, which I think is actually good. I feel like, I said they didn't have to, but in some ways I feel like they also did, because there's a lot of like positive but also not so great, maybe negative things with Barbie, like the dolls and just the franchise and what it's been. Well, first of all, the fact that Barbie was invented as like, before it was mainly just baby dolls and girls would just play mother, play mom, and this gave them like an adult Barbie, which had various different careers, and it was being able to play as like, you know, an adult who was independent. That aspect is really, really cool. But also, I don't think you can talk about Barbie without addressing, obviously, the beauty standards issue, which is ironic that I'm doing makeup as I'm talking about this. The duality of feminism, another video, because, or maybe not duality, there's so many aspects of feminism, but I remember when I first kind of learned about this type of stuff in high school, I was very like, oh, like, why is makeup a thing then? If it's like keeping us chained down, you have to be pretty to like be liked, or, you know, like, oh, like men sexualize us, like why are we still like wearing makeup then and stuff and doing all these things? Like I didn't realize that sometimes that's okay, and just doing like, and it's a form of expression and all this other stuff, and getting dressed up and all that stuff for yourself, and like women can be, you know, sexual beings, but on their own terms, not like objectified by someone else, and their humanity like stripped of them, and agency stripped, and you know, like there's just so like it's not just as simple as like, oh, makeup equals bad. It's much more like that's a whole other video, to be honest. But yeah, anyway, beauty standards with Barbie obviously has not always been, I think they've gotten better, they've gotten more inclusive from what, I mean, I'm not like a Barbie expert, but there are obviously issues with representation with the Barbie dolls that was addressed at least a little bit in the movie. Also, that little dialogue thing that Sasha has at the beginning where she's like, you set the feminist movement back 50 years. You've made girls feel like shit about their body and their self. And there's like a whole spiel thing that was like, damn, like, okay. I think that that's also what people kind of have been thinking. And so they did decide to go there. I don't know if they like fully went there. They just kind of like touched on it when Sasha was giving that little speech. And as I said, with the existentialism piece, like it added more like meaning and serious weight to it. Not that every movie like has to have like deeper meaning like that. Like some movies can just be fun or can just be this or just be that. But I feel like it was really nice to have a movie that I think people thought was gonna be super like surface level and have it have like this deeper piece to it. Also, another note, not completely related, but I love how Barbie, like, as I said, not a love story, but almost there's this question of like if Barbie's asexual. Like there wasn't really any sort of sexuality thing going on with Barbie or like sex desire or anything like that, which I feel like Barbie, I don't know, like I feel like it could have been sexualized, and that like that one Barbie where she raised her arm and like her breasts grew like some 1950s shit, like that was just yeah. But like Barbie is something that could be, because she's like so pretty and stereotypical, whatever, like I don't know, I feel like Barbie, especially representing women, like women tend to in films as well be sexualized. Yeah, I just liked how that wasn't even like a factor really in this movie, and it didn't need to be, like, for what the movie was. So I have notes on my computer, and the next section I just have Alan. Just Alan with a heart, because he's great. The world would be much better with more Alans. Yeah, anyway, love Alan. I also wanted to talk about music choices. That song that they sing whenever they're, you know, on the road. The less I seek my source from some definitive, closer I am to find. Very, like, just fits right in with the theme of identity and identity finding that I was talking about before, and beautifully ties into that speech that Barbie gives Ken towards the end, where he like derives his sense of self from. So that song is like, not only is like it musically like a good like belting singing song on the road trip, but the lyrics just, you know, blend very nicely. I think there's also a lyric about mountains, and there's like mountains in the backdrop of Barbieland. Just, you know, little things like that too. I went to the mountains. And then, of course, Push by Matchbox 20, the song that the Kens serenade the Barbies with. Amazing choice. And actually at the beginning, I was noticing this the third time I watched it. I watched it twice in theaters, and I rented it the other day to rewatch it because it's been like a little while, just to like revamp my memory. Anyway, I noticed that at the very beginning, the first lyric is, I don't know if I've ever been good enough, which also like that almost like really directly ties to what Barbie said, like, oh, I'm not good at anything, and both of their journeys to their sense of identity and worth. So that like really ties back into that identity piece. But then of course the chorus where they sing, I want to push you around, well, I will, like that very clearly defines patriarchal systems and kind of what's happening. I think I remember hearing that song, one of the members of Matchbox 20 was in an unhealthy, toxic relationship. So they're singing or writing the chorus from the point of view of their partner who was being manipulative. So it's not that Matchbox 20 is terrible. Chorus is that I want to push you down, I want to hold you down, all those things is from the perspective of the emotionally toxic partner. And but it fit in so well with the movie and what was happening at that time. Also, another note from the movie, when Ryan Gosling's character, I keep saying Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie, when Ken is about to, you know, play guitar for Barbie, he says, I'll play guitar at you, not for you. I'll play guitar at you, which it's a perfect example of how one word can really change kind of the meaning and undertone of the sentence of what's being said. And that's something I love about like writing, is how you can really emotionally color something with the words that you're using. And that's a good example of that. And no one really says that too. I think it caught me off guard because no one says, I'm going to play guitar at you. But that's kind of what he was doing. So yeah, I don't know. It was just funny. I liked it. Little thing, but little things, you know, they make a difference. Also, of course, noting just like how funny the movie is. Like some of the scenes I've been talking about, like also the serenading scene, like they have these more serious, like, you know, the way I'm talking about it is more serious and kind of this deeper meaning stuff, but it's also just like was done so like with so much humor injected into it. It feels more kind of like a comedy with these deeper things layered under. I felt like it balanced these kind of more like serious topics like gender politics, gender roles, and patriarchy, etc. Like it dealt with that stuff, but also had this lighthearted tone and would inject humor. Like nothing would stay too heavy for too long. Like that scene I keep referencing to when Ken kicks Barbie out of her house, and there's kind of this like, it is kind of a more emotionally like poignant scene, I guess, compared to the other scenes. But then when it's starting to feel a bit like, oh, this is getting a bit like emotional, he whips out the second sunglass. Like he does the double sunglasses. It's like every night's boys' night. And that was just like a great like comedic break. Also, when Barbie and Ken, you know, they've come to the Mojo Dojo Casa house, and Ken's like, oh, Century City's amazing, they have everything figured out in Century City, and Barbie's like, no, they don't, like, we failed them. And then Ken goes, no, you failed me, and then gives this like emotional speech, and Barbie starts to see how Barbieland wasn't perfect, how things were imbalanced and not super fair. Anyway, Ken gives a speech and things are getting a bit emotionally deeper and a bit more serious. I mean, I say serious still, everything because of like the acting and the body language and everything going on still has a bit of a lighthearted tone. Yeah, he says that, and then he like slides down the car dramatically, but it's like not super smooth and it like takes forever, and it's just like a funny moment. And there's like, yeah, that like kind of like body humor, there's a better word for that I'm just not thinking of right now. Slapstick I don't know if it's really slapstick, but in just like his demeanor and how he's like, Ryan Gosling did like such a great job in this role, like the way he portrayed Ken, that mix of showing this guy who like has these very clear emotional needs but doesn't know how to like communicate them or go about them, and how toxic masculinity is like affecting him and hindering him. And I don't know, it's just, but it's done in such a lighthearted, like fun, humorous way, yet moving and deep at the same time. It just had, I feel like, a nice balance. And then of course when we get that scene where Barbie decides to become human, where it's going through all that emotions of what it means to be human, that's obviously, I think, probably one of the most emotionally complex scene. And then after that, we get the scene where, you know, the ending where she is in the real world and she's going to her gynecologist appointment, and the ending was kind of more light and humorous. And so it kept this balance throughout. Balance, just like how I'm having to balance the blush on both sides of my face right now. Also, another thing that I wanted to talk about was the ending, at least in Barbieland. They're like, oh, we don't want to go back to the way that things were. And you think that it's gonna be, okay, everything's equal now, but it's not. Like the Kens ask, oh, can we get like just one spot in the Supreme Court? And she's like, not a chance, but we can start you off on some like small court judge type of thing. The voiceover says the Kens have to start somewhere, and eventually the Kens will have just as much influence and power in Barbieland as women do in the real world. I think also it was a much more realistic ending too, to have it be that way. Like, oh yes, we are making changes, but like small strides, because that's kind of how it feels like sometimes in the real world. Because ideally, you know, it would be equally Kens and Barbies in the Supreme Court, and same here, and you know, things would be fairly equal. But yeah, I think it was just more realistic with small steps and it reflecting equal rights progress with women in our world. And I think it also kind of hints at like, oh, things will slowly get better in each world, and each world will kind of reflect the other. We'll see if there's a sequel, which I'm assuming that there will be because of how ginormously successful this was. Maybe we'll see that play out or not play out, because maybe there'll be an issue with that. I don't know, we'll see. I don't know, all in all, it was really fun to watch. I'm glad this movie exists. There were so many funny moments and touching moments, so let me know what like moments stood out to you and that you really enjoyed. There's a lot that I didn't get to in this video, and also what your thoughts are on the film in general. I'd love to hear in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm trying to think of a sign off that is Barbie related. Stay sublime. Oh, I've got feelings that I can't explain, driving me insane. Kind of hard to talk when you're putting on lipstick. I'm a little bit rusty, little bit rusty, little bit rusty, little bit rusty, little bit rusty. Where's my lip liner? Here it is. The less I seek my source from some definitive. It's hard to do makeup and like talk at the same time. I don't know. I thought it would be easy just like doing your makeup and talking to a friend, but it's like my brain just isn't. Just gonna curl my lashes.